James Reynolds had everything a person could wish for: luxury cars, sprawling estates, and a portfolio of successful businesses. His name was synonymous with success, and he had more than enough money to do whatever he wanted. But despite all of his wealth and accomplishments, there was a hole in his life, an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. For the past 10 years, James had lived in a world devoid of joy. That was because 10 years ago, his young daughter Emily had disappeared. Emily had been only 8 years old when she vanished during a family trip to the lake. The trip was supposed to be a relaxing getaway from their hectic lives, a chance for them to bond as a family. Emily had been skipping stones along the shoreline, her laughter echoing through the air. She was so full of life, so full of hope. But then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. James searched high and low, hiring the best detectives, putting up posters in every city, and offering large rewards to anyone with information about his daughter. He went to great lengths, doing everything he could think of to bring Emily home. But despite his efforts, he never received a single lead. His beautiful home, once filled with the sound of Emily's laughter, now stood silent and empty. His businesses, though successful, no longer seemed to matter. Every night, James would sit by the phone, waiting for a call, hoping someone would tell him where Emily was. But the call never came. One evening, feeling more defeated than ever, James decided to take a break from his usual routine. Instead of dining at one of the high-end restaurants he often frequented, he chose to drive to a small, unassuming diner that he had passed many times but never stopped at. The diner was located on a quiet street, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was nothing like the extravagant establishments James was used to, but there was something about it that called to him. As he stepped inside, he was immediately greeted by the warmth of the place. The soft glow of yellow lights, the delicious smell of fresh bread, and the gentle hum of conversation. The atmosphere was peaceful, comforting even. It was a world away from his usual fast-paced life. He took a seat at a small table in the corner, where he could observe the patrons quietly enjoying their meals. The waitress approached, her friendly smile making James feel a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in years. She had dark brown hair, neatly tied back, and a welcoming demeanor. But what struck James the most was the small scar on her arm, a thin, curved line that seemed strangely familiar. It reminded him of the scar Emily had gotten when she fell off her bike when she was 6. He could still remember the day vividly, how Emily had cried when she scraped her arm, and how he had comforted her, promising that the scar would heal, but it would always be a part of her. The waitress, noticing James staring at her arm, gave him a polite smile. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked. "Just coffee," James replied, his voice shaking slightly. "And pasta, please." As she walked away, James couldn't help but keep his eyes on her. There was something about the way she moved, the way she smiled at customers, that reminded him so much of Emily. His heart raced as he reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph, one he had carried with him everywhere. It was the only one he had left of his daughter. He couldn't believe it, but the more he watched the waitress, the more he was convinced that this woman had a connection to Emily. He gathered his courage and finally asked, "What's your name?" The waitress paused, looking at him curiously. "Lily," she said, her voice gentle. James froze. His mind went blank. Lily. The name sent a shock through his body. For a moment he was speechless. Was it possible? Could this be her? Could this be Emily all grown up? After his meal, James couldn't leave. He felt an overwhelming need to speak to her again, to learn more about her. He approached the waitress, his hands trembling. "Lily," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to ask you something." She looked at him with concern, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" James hesitated, then pulled out the photograph of Emily. "Do you remember anything about your childhood?" he asked. "Anything at all?" Lily stared at the photo for a long moment, her face growing pale. She seemed lost in thought, her fingers trembling as they touched the picture. Then, with a quiet gasp, she looked up at him. I don't know. I don't remember much about my early years, but I I was found near a river when I was little. I don't know where I came from. I grew up in foster care. The words hit James like a punch to the stomach. He couldn't breathe. Could it really be her? He showed her the scar on his arm, the one he had never forgotten, and Lily's eyes widened. I have that scar, she said, her voice shaking. I remember, I was playing near a river, and then, I don't know what happened. I was lost and a woman found me. She told me my family wasn't coming back. I was so scared. Tears welled up in both of their eyes as they realized the truth. Lily, this woman in front of him, was his daughter, Emily. The scar, the memories, it all made sense. But there was more. The woman who had found Lily had kept her hidden away for years, and now someone was trying to stop them from uncovering the truth. They received a mysterious note in James's car, warning them to stop asking questions. James clenched his fists. He had already lost 10 years with his daughter, but he wasn't going to lose any more time. We will find out what really happened, he promised. We'll get the answers we deserve. Lily squeezed his hand, finally feeling safe after so many years of uncertainty. She had found her father. She had found where she belonged. As they drove to James's home that night, both father and daughter knew that their journey was just beginning. They had many questions to answer, many mysteries to solve, but they were no longer alone. And together they would uncover the truth.